Everyone has their own measurement of success, whether it be for their jobs, life, or for their YouTube channels here. The measurement of success that I have for this channel is, am I consistent with my reviews, and do I have the same standards for a AAA that I would for indie developers? Granted, it reflects a little bit because the indie developers would typically have smaller company or smaller teams to work with, but do I have the same standards throughout? Can I leave my subjectivity behind and look at a game for what it is, whether or not I like playing that game or that type of game or not? Are my entertaining videos that I want to entertain people, are they entertaining? Am I proud of the work I put out, or am I putting out just lazy pieces of whatever? And finally, am I keeping my integrity when I put out a video? Or am I selling myself short or selling myself out? Those are the measurements of success that I have. I will never, and again, I'm a nobody YouTuber. I have a super small channel. Granted, I love the fact that I'm growing. Thank you all for the people who have subbed. That being said, I'm not putting out videos just to get hate bait. I'm not trying to put videos out to get hate watch. And I'm not putting videos out just to be contrarian, okay? The videos I put out and I mean what it is I'm saying. And I do typically, when I do a review, which is very rare, do typically try to cover a game in as much as I can in its entirety. And I try to do it objectively. Now, that being said, this is a continuation of the video I made about Helldivers II the other day. That being said, before we begin, there is a apology I do need to make because I was wrong about part of that video, and that was the endgame. Now, no, I'm not in the endgame. I'm level 12. I've got about 20 hours in the game right now. Now, that being said, I was wrong about what I said for part of the last video I did, and that is involving the endgame. Just the endgame. The rest of what I said I stand by, and I've got the receipts for that. However, I was wrong about the endgame. I thought, and again, I was wrong about this, that you would take more damage and do less damage to enemies as you leveled up. And I thought that there were no other mission types to unlock. I was incorrect about that. There are different mission types to unlock as you level up and get to harder difficulties and higher levels. And, the enemies don't take less damage or do more to you. There are just different enemy types. I was wrong about that. However, what I was not wrong about is that I do not have to be at the end game or be at the max level of a game to have an opinion on it. You don't have to do that for any game. Should you play the game for a while? Yeah, I've got 20 hours in the game. I got a day job. I play this quite a bit. I mean, like I said, one of my friends, I play a match or two and then, do whatever else I got to do for that day. I've still played plenty to have a good idea how the game is. And again, I said the game was fun. Do I need to be at the absolute end game to talk about a game review or have an opinion on it? No. If that's the standard that we're having, then pretty much any other game that we talk about, unless you are at the end game of that, you're doing the competitive rage, you're doing competitive PvP, you're doing Grandmasters, you're doing 2, 3, 8-hour survival challenges. Unless you're doing stuff like that, then if we're going by those standards, then most people that put out reviews cannot have their opinions, or most people that comment can't have their opinions about the game. That's not how we do reviews, and that's not how I do reviews. That being said, again, I don't think you have to be at the end game to have an opinion on it. You just have to be at the end game to have an opinion about the end game, and I was wrong about that. So we're starting off with me admitting that. That being said, everything else I said about the game before was still correct, and I've got receipts to talk about it. Because, one, I said that the game was fun. I said it was good. I did say I had a good time playing it, especially with friends, but I said that the game still had some issues. We're going to start off with all those objective issues. The first one being one that just now got fixed this morning. We're starting off with this one because it just got fixed, and that is the armor. Now, this game released on February 8th of this year, 2024. It is March 6th. Damn near midnight, it's almost March 7th, but March 6th. The game only just now got its armor fixed. Just shy of 2 days of a month it took for them to fix the armor, a core component, and one of the few ways to customize your character. They just now got that fixed. Now, you can argue about how long it should take something like that to fix. However, it doesn't matter if it took a day. It doesn't matter if it took a year. At the time of review, the armor was broken. So the armor rating did not work. It didn't matter what kind of armor you had on. It wasn't increasing or decreasing. Doesn't matter how long it took the team to fix it. It could have been on release, and I put the video out, 2 minutes after release. Again, this was about a month after release, and it was not working. So it is fair to say that that was objectively broken. Now, again, it is fixed out of this morning, but was not fixed on release and was not working on release and not fixed when I put the review out. So when I talked about it, that criticism still stood, and I'm going to stand by that because it is an objective fact. The armor did not work, at least the armor rating. Now, I think the stamina and I think the effects still worked, but the armor rating itself did not work. It was broken. In a live service game, when you don't got any other way of getting armor besides a shield, that was broken. So it's an objective fact that didn't work. Now, how heavily you weigh that against the game is going to be completely up to you. I didn't say before how heavily I weighted against the game. I didn't even give the game a score. I said the game was good and it was fun, but people are jumping down my throat. Again, I understand the endgame argument. Fine, I was wrong about the endgame. However, the objective things that were wrong about the game were still wrong about it, and the armor was broken. It is fixed now. That's great. It was broken before. Now, what were some of the other things I talked about in the game? Again, on launch, and even now, the game has still got some issues with servers. Now, have they been fixed a lot? Yes. Are there still issues with them? Yes, there are. I got a lot of comments saying that they're all been fixed. No, the servers are still crashing people. People are still having issues with crossplay. I know for a fact because I've had issues with crossplay. Half the people I play with are on PC, half are on PS5. Whenever we try to crossplay, there's always crashes. It usually takes us about half an hour to get everybody in a match, and we gotta hope we don't crash when we go in. But that being said, was the game worse on launch? Yes, it most definitely was. In fact, it was so bad that people bought the game and they could not play. Now again, that is an objective fact. Now, how heavily you weigh that against the game is going to depend on a couple things. One, can you play the game without the servers, without being online? And two, just how much do you consider not being able to play a game a knock against the game? Well, this is a live service game, which means that with the servers were down and you could not connect, you could not play the game you spent money on. This is not a free-to-play game. Let's not forget that, yes, the game is only $40 to get the base game. That still doesn't make it free-to-play. It just makes it, an indie game. It makes it less than what you would typically pay for a AAA game. That being said, this is still not a free-to-play game, so we cannot expect free-to-play models or free-to-play service. So, these servers not working meant that you could objectively not play the game unless they were fixed, and if they're crashing on you and crossplay is still not working and you're still crashing when you're trying to play, that's still an objective issue. Now, the subjective part again comes into how heavily do you weigh that against something. Now, for most AAA games, I'd say it's going to weigh pretty bad against you if your servers aren't working. For single-player games, I'd say pretty bad. If it's got like a multiplayer component and you need servers to work for that, okay, if they're not working, not a big deal, you can still play the game. But for an indie game, especially when it's online, I'd probably usually give that a bit more leeway if it wasn't for the fact that this is a live service game. Meaning that no matter how small the team is, if you can't play the game, you can't play the game. Now that's as broken as it can get, not being able to log in and play the game. You can't get more broken than that, not being able to play it. Well, I guess you could, but not being able to play the game you play or paid money for is pretty much right there at the top. So again, you can argue all day and we can have a discussion over how much that should weigh against the game, but what you can't say is that the servers were working on launch and you can't say that has not been an issue. And again, I played with people here recently, it's still been an issue here. I know they have been making improvements, the game has died down slightly, I know it's still a very popular game, but there's still issues with the server and still issues with crossplay, just not nearly as prevalent. It was still fair to say that there were issues with the servers when it came out and still issues to this day. Have they improved? Yes, but there were still issues. Now, what are some of the other issues? I talked about the battle pass, and I talked about the fact that there was predatory monetization in the game. Now, I got a comment essentially saying that the battle pass is fine and that there's not predatory monetization, or at least it's not predatory like other games. I beg you differ because objectively, there is predatory monetization in Helldivers 2. First up, I want to talk about the Superstore. We'll talk about the Battle Pass in a second. That's a whole other thing. Let's talk about the Superstore. There is premium currency in the game. Again, this is not a free-to-play game. So the fact that there is premium currency and a store in here is automatically going to be a ding against it. Again, how much you weigh that against the game is up to you, but this is a game that you pay, maybe not premium money for, but it's not a AAA game. You're going to expect indie game prices, but that does not mean it can get away with a free-to-play model or having an in-game store without having some kind of negative against it. Now, there are credits in the game. You can earn super credits, a very small amount of super credits from the battle passes, and you can find them randomly out in the world. There's no real good way to farm those except for just doing a lot of grinding, which is pretty much the nature of a live service with this kind of store in it. But the fact of the matter is that there is a store in game that does take a premium currency that you can buy. Now, note I've got the store open right now and it currently has 4 different items. Now you can argue that these are all cosmetic, except the armor, of course, is not cosmetic. It has a function. So half the items in game or in the store are cosmetic, half of them are not. As of to date, there are no weapons in here, and if I were to speculate, I'd say eventually they will come out with weapons, maybe they won't. That one is pure subjectivity and pure speculation. What is not speculation is the fact that there is a timer on here, and that this store only ever shows 4 pieces of armor at a time. This store does not show all the armor that you can buy, and it's got the timer right there. That is textbook FOMO. And for those who don't know, FOMO means FOMO, fear of missing out. That means that if you do not have enough currency that you've grinded up, you don't know if this armor is going to be back in time. You don't know how much other armor is in there. If they just had a whole catalog of all the armor you could buy, that'd be one thing, but they don't. They've got that rotating timer in there because that's how you put FOMO in the game. That's how you get people to panic buy if they see a piece of armor they want and they don't know they're going to have the currency to get it. If they did not have FOMO or they weren't going to be predatory, that timer would be gone, and there would just be a catalog of all the armor that you could buy in the game right then and there. This armor also can't be gotten in the Battle Pass too. I've already went through and checked. I did this video earlier. I redid it because I ran it a little bit. But I went through and checked. The B2 Enforcer cannot be found in the Battle Pass. Now, I went ahead and checked the other one, or didn't check the other one. I went ahead and just did the first option there. The B24 Enforcer is not in either Battle Pass. And again, either meaning the two. There are two Battle Passes. There is a Premium Battle Pass. But you cannot actually earn this in-game unless you actually earn the actual currency or you buy that currency. Again, you can get some of it in the Battle Pass, but that also means you cannot buy all the items. You cannot technically earn all the items in the game right now. You can buy them, but you also don't know what all items there are because, again, we have a rotating store. This is not just a set store. That timer's there for a reason. That's to get people to panic buy. Are most people going to panic buy? No, but typically when you have predatory monetization, you're not going for those, the majority of people, you're going for those whales who are going to spend a ton of money and buy up everything there is. Just because it's not everybody buying up everything, or just because there's not a ton on the store page, does not mean that it's still not FOMO. It does not mean that it's still not predatory. In fact, most predatory monetization is not targeted at me and you. It's targeted at those whales who are going to drop 100, 200, not even those. The ones that are going to drop 10,000, 100,000. Thinking of people that are spending 100-some thousand on Diablo 4. That shit's insane. Now, you and I probably wouldn't do that, but that's still how that works, and that still exists in this game. Now, you can, again, that's subjective. You can make the subjective argument about how much that weighs against the game, but again, you cannot make the objective argument that is not FOMO in the game. If you're going to try to make that argument, you're going to have to explain to me why there's a timer for a rotating store instead of just having all the store items on the page. Why not just have every armor piece right there? Do you have any idea how many armor pieces are in the game? I have no idea how many armor pieces are in the game. Somebody probably does. But the fact that these armor pieces are rotating and not just, a whole catalog of, hey, here's our armor. In fact, if I was going to say to improve this, take out that timer, like I said before, and just put all the armor there and let us buy what we want. We don't got to worry about if we're ever going to see this piece of armor again. We don't got to worry about if we spend the last of our premium currency, if something cooler is going to come out 4 hours and 20 minutes from now. That is the definition of predatory monetization. Now and again, any AAA game doing this, we'd be talking terribly about. But because it's Helldivers 2, we gotta act as though it's not there or gloss over it. Objectively there, subjective is how much you're gonna weigh it against it, but it still exists. Now, let's talk about the war bonds. That's what they call the battle passes for Helldivers 2. There is the free one, and there is a premium one. Now, I went through and I tallied up how much currency you can get out of the free battle pass. It's 750. You can get an additional 300 out of the premium one. That's 1,050 that you can or 1,050 credits you can actually use to buy stuff from the store. However, if you're not spending money, you're probably using most of those credits to actually unlock that premium pass as well. Or you can, of course, skip that and buy it with actual money. When you buy the game, you spend extra $20, you get the extra armor pieces, you get the extra weapon, and it also unlocks the premium battle pass. I had no idea that's how it worked when I got the game. I thought you just got the extra cool armor and the title. Regardless of how much it is, it could be 100. You still got to spend that premium currency to unlock that additional battle pass. Now, you can again make the argument that yes, technically speaking, you can't buy any of the items in the first battle pass. Fair enough. But you do have to buy the second battle pass, and it does take premium currency. And if you want to buy anything in the superstore, it takes you more premium currency. So, no matter how you look at it, it's still FOMO. It's still fear of missing out. It is still a monetary practice that is used by live service games. Now, is it as bad as, say, what they have in the superstore? No. Is it still a battle pass? Is it still something that we would typically get on other games about, that we would hold against AAA games? Yes, it is. Especially 2 tiers of battle passes. Again, people got on me about talking about Destiny 2. Well, it's the game that I play the most. It is my main game, and it's easy to compare things to. Destiny 2 has got a premium battle pass, and it has been complained about a lot. It's got the free battle pass, where, every few levels you unlock something, most of it's kind of crap. Then it's got the premium battle pass as well, where it's got something every level. You typically see that, and it's still FOMO. It is fear of missing out, because if you don't like everything in that season, you're going to miss out on it or have to spend real money for it later on. In fact, near the end of a Destiny 2 season, and I suspect that might happen with this game with Helldivers 2, you can actually literally buy levels for the Battle Pass. I'm wondering if they're going to do the same thing here on Helldivers 2. We'll see what happens near the end of the season, or whatever it is they're going to call them. It's usually called season. That's what they're typically called in the community, but that's not nearly as bad as the other things I talked about. However, the fact of the matter is, it is still an issue with the game. Making things overly grindy is an issue with a lot of different games. Granted, a lot of that extra grind is stuff you can't buy away. There are plenty of games where they have a lot of grind, but the only way to get those items is to grind. You can't buy them. But excess grind and, again, cash stores are still issues with AAA games that we would still talk about and we would still hold against those games as well. It does not make sense, and it is not consistent to hold those things against AAA games and not hold them against a game that is beloved like Helldivers 2. If we're going to go through and we're going to say that we're going to overlook all those issues that are in Helldivers 2 because people like the gameplay so much, and that means every review where we talked about these other games having these predatory monetization practices or these overly excessive grindy battle passes, every one of those we can't talk about or criticize because the gameplay in those is also fun for somebody. If we're going to hold to that standard, then we can't criticize any game. And if we're going to go ahead and say, well, this battle pass isn't as grindy or this monetization isn't as bad as it could be, it's not a matter of is it as bad as it could be, is it there to begin with? And I can remember a time, and yes, I'm showing my age here. I can remember a time where battle passes and extra monetization were unheard of in games. You would spend the money on your game, and then you would get your game, and then that was it. They might come out with DLC, and they might update it later on. I can remember a time when games were released when they weren't super buggy. I can remember times when games released, and they got panned because they did release buggy, and they had to do recalls, or you were just stuck with that game, and nobody ever bought it because the game was broken. I can remember those times. Now, am I saying that we should be back in those times? No, games are much, much more complex nowadays. I can completely understand the fact that games have to be patched on later on. It is very easy to play test with a million people playing the game and looking for bugs when it's released versus a team of 100 people. They're going to have a lot more chances once the game is released upon these bugs than you are when you're developing them, or than you are when you were developing them. So I'm not getting on that, but the monetization practices are still predatory. Game companies are making, and again, I'm aware this is an indie game. Now I'm talking about AAA. Game companies are making record-breaking profits, and then they're turning around and they're firing all their people. These are things that we don't allow. These are things that we talked about in the community that are terrible. Sony just did it. What is it? Bungie just did it. I think a few other companies are doing it. They're laying off people and they're still making record-breaking profits. They're overly monetizing their games and we're getting tired of it. Why is it that we're allowing it we're not allowing it for those games, or we're speaking up about it in those games? But when a game like Helldivers 2 comes out, which is a very popular game and people like, we can't talk about it anymore. We have to have the same standard no matter where the game is coming from, especially when it comes to things like monetization. Now, again, is it subjective on how much these things mean to you? Yes, it is. Is it objectively bad for the gaming industry? Yes, it also is. And we can see that because things like this are in these games, it's gotten worse and worse and worse over the years. We've gotten to the point now where I have people in my comment section saying, at least the battle pass is not as predatory as it could be. Or at least the monetization is not as predatory as it could be, or is not predatory. They're still predatory. They are still predatory by definition, and we've fallen that far in the gaming industry that is the standard now. That is not as predatory as it could be. So, that's what I got to say about Helldivers 2. Listen, I never said that the game wasn't fun. I said it was good and not great. And I'm going to be honest here, and this is part of me that's probably talking a bit more out of emotion than the rest of this, which was pretty subjective. I could have said that the game was great and not excellent. I could have said that the game was excellent and not fantastic. I could have said that the game was fantastic but not perfect. I probably still would have gotten hate comments in there. And I'm not saying hate comments, but I got a lot of comments. Again, those that were talking about the endgame, okay, fine. Those were deserving. Or had some points. However, we can't overlook all the other issues in the game too. Just because the game is fun doesn't mean we get to overlook all the rest of them. I have to have consistency. You have to have consistency. We all have to have consistency, not just as players, not just as creators, but as people in the gaming sphere, period. You've got to have consistency. Otherwise, the game companies are going to turn around and see, hey, this game was really popular. It had really fun gameplay. They were able to get away with a battle pass and a premium battle pass and a cash shop. So if we make a really fun game, we can get rid of all that and then maybe make the battle pass a bit more pricier. Make it to where if you want to, you can buy levels on the battle pass, or we can put a few more items in the shop or make it a bit more expensive. That's how that's infiltrated the gaming sphere. And that's how they're going to continue to do so unless we start pushing back and unless we start getting consistent. So, that being said, that was my follow-up to the Helldivers 2 video. I've got nothing else to say about it until something new comes out for the game, until something new releases. Everything I said on here was objectively correct. Now, how you want to weigh that against the game is going to be completely up to you. Have I apologized about the endgame thing? Yes, I haven't played the endgame, but I also stand by the fact you do not have to play the endgame to talk about the base game. Just like you don't have to do that for any game, because if we're going to go by those standards, unless you've beaten the game at the hardest difficulty it has to offer, you can't talk about any game. And I'm sure some of the people that were talking to me didn't or haven't done anything on the absolute hardest difficulty in this game or haven't unlocked everything. Some of you have. Okay, great. If that's your standard for whether or not somebody can review the game, okay, great. There's probably very few reviewers you can talk to or go through to look at the games though. However, that being said, I can still give an opinion on the game as far as how it was released and where it is during that review and what I've thought about the game. And again, I'm going to end with this because for some reason people were acting as though I said the game was terrible. I enjoyed the game. My friends enjoy the game. Just because I enjoy the game does not mean I cannot talk about the objective issues with the game. And just because everybody loves it does not mean we should ignore it. And just because everybody gave me hate comments or said I was wrong does not mean I'm going to take back my opinion on the game, because everything I talked about were not opinions, they were objective facts. If I were to score the game, that would be an objective opinion. I did not score it. I just said it was good and not great. It is a good game to play. It is fun to play. However, these issues exist in the game, and no one except the armor, of course, I got fixed this morning. That being said, everything else about the game still exists and is still an issue, especially the monetization, because as of right now, historically, I haven't seen too many games get rid of the monetization that they've had in place since launch. Very few games have done that, and I haven't seen very much pushback from the Helldivers II community about the monetization that's in there, which means historically this tells me it's likely not going to get pushed back. The game itself will improve. They'll get more DLC, they'll get more stuff or content added to the game. They're going to get more or the servers will get more stable. The crossplay will get more stable. There'll be a lot less crashes. Those things will improve. However, things like the monetization and the FOMO is not going to improve, more than likely. Because again, historically, that's not how game companies go, especially when the game is released and the community basically accepts it, or they just gives in or they take it. So it is what it is. That being said, thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you on the next video.